Electricity Company of Ghana to, with immediate effect, withdraw the current billing system, which has resulted in the astronomical increases in tariffs. This comes after several calls by consumers on the Regulatory Commission to investigate the arbitrary charges for the power consumed. We will go through the statements shortly, but earlier I spoke to the Director of Public Affairs at the PURC, Nana Jantua, to understand what exactly has informed this decision and what it means for us as consumers. She indicated that this has come at a time of the consumers have had cause to worry about the kind of charges they see with the billing, and she was specific with the postpaid, and so we will look at that a bit more later. But while we try and get you that interview and also the statements from the PURC, we know that this announcement is coming at the same time when members of parliament are also raising similar concerns about these astronomical bills that are being paid. In fact, today in parliament, the majority chief whip, Alhaji Muntaka Mubarak Muhammad, has been speaking extensively on the floor in a statement he delivered, saying that it's even gotten to the point where ECG officials are deliberately cheating unsuspecting Ghanaians of all of these issues to do with the administrative lapses and deliberately cheating staff, staff from ECG cheating the ordinary Ghanaian. Let's bring you what the majority chief had to say in Parliament today.
Mr. Speaker, the complaints have come from both lifeline consumers and other categories of consumers. Reports suggest that in several cases, the cost of consumption has more than doubled. This has imposed undue hardship on virtually all Ghanaians, especially on the ordinary masses. It has come to my notice that where some individuals has complained to ECG, the errors in their billing were corrected and the problems were somehow resolved. But for the majority of consumers, the overbilling still persists. Mr. Speaker, it has come to my notice that the overall effect of this is that the effort of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama to permanently solve the long-standing power crisis is severely being undermined, and the crisis in the supply of electricity is being deepened. Mr. Speaker, my information reveals that the following are some of the causes of the problem. A. Errors in the billing of the newly installed prepaid meters. B. Administrative lapses due to poor supervision of technical officers by their superiors. C. Deliberate effort by some unscrupulous ECG officials to take advantage of the new billing arrangement for personal gains. D. Overestimation of bills by consumers on postpaid meters. Mr. Speaker, on account of the above, I wish to recommend the following. A. ECG should take immediate steps to correct the technical errors associated with the meters. B. Public Utility Regulatory Commission should work with ECG to review the fault and restore the lifeline state for the underprivileged. C. ECG should take urgent steps to give individual households a meter instead of a compound house with a meter or two, hence not benefiting from the lifeline subsidy for the poor. D. In cases where consumers are overbilled, arrangement be made for ECG to either refund the excess payment or credit the accounts of consumers so affected. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of should be invited to brief Parliament on concrete steps he intends to take to prevent the reoccurrence of this crisis in billing.
Right, so that's the majority chief speaking on the floor of Parliament today in relation to this issue of the prepaid meters and the billing system we've seen in the past few days. Already we know the PURC has indicated that they are actually asking the ECG to, with immediate effect, withdraw the current billing system. For 10 days, they will be required to deal with these issues related to the billing, so we get to understand what the problem is, and then further decisions will be taken. Also, in the statement by the PURC, they were emphatic about issues to do with staff of the ECG at the district office, at the regional office, doing things and manipulating the system such that people get to pay more than what they are supposed to. So for instance, if I'm supposed to pay 100 cedis, you end up paying 300 to 400 cedis based on what you buy. They're saying that the ECG will have to look into this matter. Remember that sometime last week, the Power Ministry put together a task force which was to investigate this issue further and get to understand why we're seeing people paying too much for the power they consume. They were given 14 working days to finish their report and submit it, after which the Power Ministry will take a decision on what to do. Today, the PRC says this is the first step they're also taking in rectifying this challenge with our billing system in the country today. We'll bring you an extensive interview with the Director of Public Affairs for the PURC Agenda. We'll get that interview to you in just a moment. But we also know that in Parliament, a lot of MPs have been livid on this matter. We will return to the House and speak to our parliamentary correspondent for more on this particular story. But while we wait for that, let me bring you the story at this point. Remember that from last week, the president was speaking about what he's been doing in the country on corruption when he went to the UK for that anti-corruption summit. Well, today, his advisor on corruption at the presidency, Daniel Batadam, has been sitting down with us, Joy News, to explain to us what exactly President Mahama has done in the last 4 years to tackle corruption in this country.
You were recently in London with the president for the anti-corruption summit. I would want to know what benefit has come out of that summit with regards to Ghana's fight against corruption.
Okay, thank you very much, and I think I appreciate the opportunity to look at the summit from the perspective of at least the potential benefit that it could hold for Ghana. And by way of background, you would have noticed that this is a summit that was initiated by the British Prime Minister David Cameron, and although it is global in nature, it was not all countries that were invited. It was unlike a UN type of meeting, but there were selected countries that were invited by the British Prime Minister to this summit. And I think as Ghanaians, we should be happy and proud that the Prime Minister found it necessary to invite our president from among just half a dozen African leaders.
He mentioned Afghanistan and Nigeria.
Yes.
If he had said that Ghana was also fantastically corrupt, what would have been your response or reaction?
Well, generally, if you look at the trend of corruption in Ghana and the way we have been dealing with it or trying to tackle it, it would be difficult for anybody to say to point at Ghana as a country that is fantastically corrupt. If anything at all, I think what can be said of Ghana is a country that has had a checkered history of continuously confronting the issue of corruption. And this is also evident from the kind of results that we have had from our surveys, the internationally recognized surveys that Ghana has participated in, notably the Corruption Perception Index. Ghana has been improving continuously. Between 2009 and now, we have moved from 39 to 48. That's 9 points. So even though we agree, like many other countries, that corruption is a problem, we are working at it, and I think we are making more progress. So it would be strange. It would also not represent the facts of the situation.
Okay, so
having said that, in terms of the benefits, first of all, I think it was important, and that is one of the reasons I thought it was a good thing for our president to attend this summit. It was important for a leader from a developed democracy and a developed country to take the initiative of holding this summit, especially coming in the aftermath of the Panama Papers and other revelations, the WikiLeaks of years past. I think it was for us as a country and for us as Africans a beginning of an acknowledgement. Corruption is actually not an African problem. It is a global problem. And world leaders who in the past have been referring to Africa and African countries as corrupt and are now beginning to realize that no, it is not about Africa, it is a global problem. And in fact, beyond that recognition, if you look at the communique that finally came out of it, the emphasis on those countries that have served as havens, safe havens for stolen wealth from the poor countries and all that, the responsibility they also have and their role in the perpetuation of corruption in the so-called corrupt places. And that is where the comment about Nigeria was important, even for Nigeria, because where were the stolen proceeds from Nigeria, the stolen monies from Nigeria kept? They were kept in Swiss bank, in London, in America, and so on and so forth. So to the extent that a developed country and its leader decided that let's come together, rich and poor, developed and developing, democratic and in some cases not so democratic countries, and begin to tackle this problem, because none of us is free from it. And for me, that is an important dimension, because the corruption we have in our countries is not just corruption that is taking place or emanating from our country. Sometimes it is also coming from outside. A lot of multinational institutions are known to have been bribing public servants in developing countries. That means that if we want to tackle corruption in our countries, we must also trace it to the sources. And some of the sources are from outside our countries. To that extent, I think that was a very important reason for us to make time for the summit. Besides, internally, I think the summit was useful for us in Ghana. It gave us the opportunity to look at our own homegrown anti-corruption action plan, which we are in the second year of implementation. It gave us the opportunity to call together the stakeholders, the public anti-corruption agencies, the civil society groups that have been advocating for various reforms. We looked also at the extractive sector, the Ghana 80, the GATI, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which was a very key point of the summit, because the summit, one of the areas that the summit focused on was beneficial ownership. You know, the true owners of companies and all the things that the people normally hiding behind, companies and so on. So it was of importance for us because it helped us to take a look at where we are in some of those areas. And I think one of the key commitments Ghana made there was to ensure that we have a beneficial ownership register, and that is key to our governance, especially in the extractive sector. We already have provisions in our laws, in the companies law, in the current bill before Parliament, the E&P bill, has some clauses on beneficial ownership, but they were not sharp enough. So this summit gave us the opportunity to take a look at those laws. We looked at the companies bill, which is currently before Parliament for amendment, and we saw that there were gaps. So we decided, the President decided that, look, let us take a look at the loopholes in the Companies Act and ensure that there are beneficial ownership clauses included, so that there can be transparency across board in terms of who the real owners of the businesses and companies that deal with us in our country and outside are. And I think to that extent, anything that can help us to increase transparency, anything that can help us to know the true sources of the wealth that people have, and therefore to be able to call them to account, is something we should appreciate. And to that extent, I think Ghanaians should be happy that our president, our country was invited, our president was invited, and that we were able to participate and to make commitments. Some of the other commitments we made as a country were in the area of reporting corruption. And you know that that is the demand side of fighting corruption. In many African countries, the weakness has been that the environments in the countries don't provide for strong protection for people who want to fight corruption, citizens, ordinary people. And although in Ghana we already have it, because you yourself and Anas and a number of other investigative journalists have been able to do a lot to expose corruption, which is very important and critical to the fight. But we still needed to make sure that there are more guarantees and protection for people who take the risk of exposing corruption. And so, again, the summit provided us with an opportunity to look at the kind of protection regimes we have. We already have the Whistleblowers Act. Before this summit, we were already in the process of developing a Witness Protection Act, which has to come along with a Witness Protection Program. And all these are already commitments somehow we had made under the UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. But of course, the summit provided a kind of step ahead, that, as they call it, a step changer, so that we take these things forward in a more, faster than we probably would have done. So, although we were already on course to do a lot of these things under our national program, I believe that the UK summit provided us with an opportunity to fill in some of the gaps and to examine those areas that we can still do something on and commit to doing them. In some cases within time frames that will allow us to get the full benefits of our anti-corruption agenda. But all in all, I think it was an opportunity to reinvigorate our national anti-corruption agenda, which we are already implementing.
Okay, I think the problem with many Ghanaians, or for many Ghanaians, is that we don't seem to trust the kind of commitment our government claims to be making in the fight against corruption. And I was in Nigeria in October last year, and anybody you spoke to spoke so highly of Buhari. He may have his faults, but when it comes to corruption, they say his body language alone does not tolerate it. I have done a few, and I can tell you that the Attorney General recently went to Parliament with regards to monies that are supposed to be retrieved from the Jida scandal. And the report she submitted was only for the interest-free loans. This scandal was broken in 2013, and by July, a report was submitted to the president. As we speak, there is nothing that is being done about the other amounts of monies. We have certain ministers who even play bigger roles. I can tell you, Humado wanted to sign a particular contract that even Jida officials were against it. He went ahead, signed the contract. We're losing 120 million Ghana cedis a year as management fees. All of these pieces of information or evidence are out there, but nothing is being done. How do you reconcile this with the claim that our president is fighting corruption?
Well, you see, I often tell people, and I've heard these examples being given again and again, there is a difference between political will to fight corruption and political enthusiasm. Sometimes leaders come into office. I agree with you, don't get me wrong, that the posture of a leader is important. The posture of a leader, if people are scared because they believe that this leader is somebody who will deal with them, or whose government will deal with them when they are found wanting, it's important. And I don't think our president is short of that, because we know, although anybody who has been in Ghana knows that this is perhaps one of the few times in the history of our country that a sitting government is taking steps to expose corruption, to prosecute where possible officials. You know, you've cited the JIDA, but the other side of it is that there are officials, including the former head of the JIDA, who is being prosecuted.
Who is being used as a
The president cannot determine the outcome of the prosecutions. And I think that is where sometimes but if you will allow me, the point I want to make is that, yes, the kind of examples we give of countries and leaders who come and are seen to be fighting corruption because they are saying, go and arrest this fellow, put this fellow in this. Ghana has gone through this before, by the way. We have done this before. The problem is not about enthusiasm.
The military regime?
Yes, we have had this, we have passed through this.
But Buhari is not doing that arbitrary. He's doing it with the laws that are in place.
I think if we did that in Ghana, and we have gone through that, in Ghana, if you came in a new government, even under this democratic dispensation, you started telling people to proceed on leave and all that, you might be construed to be witch hunting. That is an important dimension. That's why I was making
even if you are right, if you are doing the right thing.
Well, witch hunting doesn't mean that they are actually witch hunting, but the fact is the perception, and that is the point.
So do you care about doing the right thing or succumbing to the perceptions?
The right thing is important, whether you are perceived to be witch hunting. The point I want to make is the sustainability of it, and the sustainability of it is where you then come to exhaust dealing with the ones, the former public officials, the former corrupt officials, and you have to deal with the ones of your own time. And that is where I think we must give credit to our president, and we must give credit to this government.
Why?
Because it is not easy. It is historically not done for a government and a president to, one, be initiating or instigating the institutions that to investigate officials involved in things that...
Which ones does he initiate?
Well, you know.
I don't know.
You do know. Even the JIDA and things you are talking about are not, even if they were not initiated by government, government had to take actions when the issues were brought to the fore. The NSS, the National Service thing, was initiated by government through the agencies. We can discuss, we can debate that. The point I want to make is, and I think Ghanaians are smart enough to know that we must go beyond this rhetoric about fighting corruption, meaning the examples you are giving of Nigeria, those they are giving of Tanzania, are examples that we have passed through in this country, where a president or a government comes, and allow me to make my point, a government comes and is pursuing people, officials of the former government. That we have done that in Ghana. It's no longer fashionable. Ghana,
so
Ghana has passed
Buhari's steps to that of Rawlings in the military regime.
I'm not making comparisons. I'm talking about
regime are you talking about that
I'm talking about the fact that we need to understand that the only time you can begin to see an anti-corruption agenda that looks sustainable and that is credible is when that agenda includes your own time. And we are in that in Ghana. In Ghana, we are no longer pursuing MPP officials. If the investigations you are mentioning are investigations of people, some of whom have been appointed by the Professor Mills government or Mahama's government, and that is the way to tackle corruption. If only we ended our fight against corruption by, let's say, from 2009 by saying, and in any case, let me ask you, before 2009, what didn't we hear about corruption of the former government officials? But when we came in,
also tell you that,
but we are going through, we are now in a system of rule of law.
A minister of state was jailed under President Kufuor.
I talked about political enthusiasm. It includes some form of tokenism to say that, look, it is not only the others.
That is what is happening now, because Abuga Pele, for some of us, we think he's being used as a scapegoat in the JIDA scandal.
That is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that even the government is ready to deal with appointees of its own. That is another way of looking at it. So I don't hold brief for anybody. I don't believe that it's about scapegoat. I mean, using one person as a scapegoat. I think that there are more issues and instances where current appointees of the government are being investigated. And I'm saying that it is not that is enough to just investigate them. The full cycle of which includes getting back what is lost to the state is what would be meaningful to Ghanaians in terms of the fight against corruption. But the courage to do it under your regime is a mark of political will. It is different from political enthusiasm, which is mainly tackling corruption of the past. And we are yet to give those examples you are giving for Nigeria and Tanzania and others. We have to give time to see whether it is only going to end with the corruption, tackling the corruption of the past, or it will include. And that is where the challenge of the fight against corruption has been everywhere in Africa. It is that very often we come and then say, well, there was corruption in the past, and we start chasing after those ones. And then we realize that, oh, the very corruption we were accusing others of is still going on under our own eyes. And then at that point, we become a bit adamant. That is where you can start faulting people, faulting leaders. And I think we have made progress on that. I think that, and it is not only because, I'm not saying only from 2009, progressively, since 1992 when we returned to this rule, we are the only constraint, one of the constraints is that, you know, we are under rule of law. And it is not enough to say that somebody is corrupt, so throw him into jail. The fellow has a right to be heard. When the MPP people were accused of being corrupt before the 2008 elections and we came into 2009, they could not just be thrown into court because they were perceived to be corrupt. Institutions had to be established, investigations had to be made. Some people that many Ghanaians believed were corrupt, many Ghanaians believed to have done wrong things, are walking freely because the due process ended up saying they did.
Let me just give you a few examples that happened in the current government. I investigated SADA.
Are we talking about the summit corruption, or we are talking about the...
We have come back home, the benefits. We are talking about the implementation now of whatever we did. And I investigated SADA. Yes. I know what happened there. As we speak, not a single person has been investigated. I'm not saying they should be thrown into jail or even be taken to court. There has not been any investigation instituted against anybody. I personally went to the Attorney General when there was so much talk about why Betty Moldridrisu and others were left out of the prosecution. And what she told me was that it was a decision of the government not to charge them.
I cannot verify that.
I reported that, and it's online. If you Google, you read such stories. And what I'm saying is that we have a lot of such issues. I've mentioned Humado and others. Mm-hmm. And if you are following the revelation with this Smarties deal, it is apparent that the procurement laws were broken, and it seems nobody is doing anything. Do you sincerely believe that if I look at all of this, should I praise the president for being committed to fighting corruption?
Well, I don't think we have come to that, and I'm not sure we are talking about praising the president. On the contrary, if you listen to the president himself on a regular basis, the manner in which he's lamenting about how corruption is bleeding our nation and our economy, you would know that he's not asking for praise from anybody. And I would be the last to ask for praise for any president, because it would mean that we have reached our destination.
But does President Mahama deserve the praise?
President Mahama deserves some commendation for where he has taken us to and the vision he has for a longer term, sustainable way of containing corruption in our country. I think, as a person quite knowledgeable in what it takes to fight corruption in the long term, I think President Mahama deserves some commendation, because he is looking at the short, the medium, and the long term. He looks at as a president and a leader of a government, he looks at what he can do within the limits of the law. He tries to do them. What he cannot do because of legal constraints, such as criminal prosecutions that people want, he is trying to look at how we refine our laws, make them more robust, so that we can catch people or entities that engage in corruption, and those will take time to bring results. But I think the commendation is more for looking at the fact that, instead of just focusing on short-term, curative approaches, you look also at reform-oriented manner, and the results of reform take time to come. And I think that is where people believe that, well, if, for instance, we are still trying to work on some of the laws that will make it tighter for people to, and until those laws are passed through Parliament, you would see people taking advantages of the loopholes. And so, what can the president do in such circumstances? But I can say without fear of contradiction that if you look at the steps being taken, the implementation, the ongoing implementation of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, the system reforms that are aimed at blocking the recurrence of corruption, I believe come 5-10 years, Ghana will be a country that can boast of having been able to take the right decisions and measures to contain corruption, to prevent the recurrence of systematic and systemic corruption. Because really, Manasseh, let's come to the bottom line. If we continue leaving the loopholes that exist in the system and keep replacing the people, we are going to have the same problem forever. So I think that is where the president is taking the bull by the horn and saying, well, there are some things we can do to tackle the problem in the short to medium term. We are doing those things. There are some things which are not in our control, which require better legislation. We need to take the steps to do that. It is in that context that we have made some of the commitments we made at the summit, including getting beneficial ownership into our regime. So, I mean, those are the kind of things you use to and then I mentioned the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. Why? Why is it that all of a sudden Ghanaians are finding that index not so important? We have been improving in it from 2009 to date, and we have moved from 39 to 48. That's 9 points. We are tackling corruption. We are moving in the right direction. You cannot be saying, as for the public talk about corruption, it is part of the gains we have made as a democracy. Go to some of our neighboring countries and see whether you can talk freely about a public official, I'm not talking of president, being corrupt. Can't.
And finally, in 2013, when I broke the story about JIDA, you were one of those we spoke to. You sounded very angry. You thought hairs should roll. And these are your words, hairs must roll, in one of the interviews for Top Story with Evans Mensah. The Daniel Batidam then and the Daniel Batidam now. If you look at the situation, are you satisfied with how the JIDA scandal has been tackled by government?
In 2014, a year after I told you that heads must roll, I sat in the studios of Joy FM and was asked whether I thought what had been retrieved for JIDA in relation to what had been lost was enough, and I said it was not enough and that more needed to be done.
Do you still hold that view? I
hold that view. One of the things people don't understand is that when we think that when somebody, all of us necessarily lose our pulse by taking up. I think that from where I sit now, maybe not to make excuses, I see more and appreciate some of the challenges of tackling the problems, but I don't give any excuses or reasons for us having the problems. And I don't think that anything that was not right yesterday is right today.
So that's the President's advisor on corruption, Daniel Batid. I'm speaking to my colleague Manasseh Awuni just this afternoon on the matter of how government has been handling corruption and what he's also been doing personally in advising the President on how to deal with the major scandals we've seen over the past 4 years. Just before we started the story, we were talking about that news from the PURC and their decision to withdraw, asking the ECG to withdraw the billing system that they've been using recently, the new billing software that was introduced. They are looking at it again. Today in Parliament, it was big. We heard from the Majority Chief Whip, but a lot more has happened even after the statement was delivered by the Majority Chief Whip. Elton Brobe is our parliamentary correspondent. He's joining me now in the studio with more on this particular story. Elton, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
So beyond Alhaji Mubarak speaking on this matter, what's been the other concerns raised by the MPs on this issue of the overbilling?
I think all the MPs have one way or the other suffered what they describe as overbilling by the ECG. Indeed, the Member of Parliament for Doma West, Kwaku Ajimamenu, gave some examples. According to a hotel which is quite close to where he lives, the manager of that hotel brought to him receipts. I mean, payments is made over the period. Now, it looks like it's been up and up and up till now. He started by paying 50,000. Now, he said last month bill that the ECG gave him, he is expected to pay 500,000 Ghana cedis, from 50,000 to 500,000 Ghana cedis. So what he's done, instead of closing down the facility, he's now decided to now rely on generator instead of the national grid, and he's paying even less. So, I mean, these are some of the examples they provided to buttress the point that indeed ECG must do more to address what they describe as, you know, astronomical increment in the price of utilities. Because according to what PURC approved for ECG, it's lower than what we are paying right now.
Okay.
So on the floor itself, you know, the speaker, you know, gave some directive as to how this matter should be addressed. Already, the Mines and Energy Committee is already investigating this particular matter. They've been provided with additional terms of reference. What the speaker has asked them to do right now is first, that the ECG should take immediate steps to correct the technical errors associated with the meters. Also, the PURC, by the speaker directive, is to work with the ECG to review the fault and restore the lifeline state for the underprivileged. Secondly, they are also asking ECG to take urgent steps to give individual households meters instead of a compound house with a meter or two, hence not benefiting from the lifeline subsidy for the poor. And then lastly, the Power Minister should appear before the Mines and Energy Committee to assist them in their investigation into this particular matter. The earlier appeal was to the Speaker to summon the Power Minister. We are told that the Finance Minister has a supervisory the Power Ministry because they don't have a substantive minister now. So the Speaker was asked to, you know, bring him before Parliament. But because the issues involve are more of a technical issue and the Mines and Energy Committee is already investigating the matter, the Speaker directive was to the Power Minister to now appear before the committee and assist them in their deliberation. They are supposed to come back to the House next week to report back to the House progress made so far. But for Muntaka, whom I spoke to after I spoke to him about the allegation he made, that some staff of ECG are involved in this for their personal gain. I asked him how come he came to that particular conclusion. For him, he has evidence to prove that indeed some people from his constituency complained to ECG about how much they've been asked to pay. Now, some staff of the ECG, sort of, you know, fixing the problem, came to their homes and told them that they could actually work on their meter for them to pay lesser rate. Now, what happened was that they eventually succeeded in doing this. So initially, some of them were paying like 1,000 Ghana cedis, and now they are paying 200. So for him, it is ample evidence to prove that indeed some ECG officials are taking advantage of the current situation and are making money out of the situation. They think that then it's possible that the ECG can do something about what is happening right now. That's how come they asked the Power Minister, the ECG to all appear before the committee to resolve this issue once and for all.
Okay, so that's for the power issue and what the MPs have been talking about in Parliament on this particular matter. Before we look at what else happened on the floor in Parliament today, let me read a statement from the PURC. They released some 3 hours ago in relation to this matter, and it's signed by the Director of Public Affairs for the PURC, Nanaya Jantua, says the PURC has ordered the Electricity Company of Ghana to suspend the implementation of their new billing software until further notice. This action by the Commission has been necessitated by complaints which it has received from consumers of electricity regarding issues of overbilling. The Commission, after a thorough investigation into the matter through their monitoring exercise, which culminated into visits to specific areas and also interrogation of bills which were presented to consumers by the ECG, came to the conclusion that there was indeed an anomaly in the initial implementation of the new billing software. Some of the key issues that came to the fore during the PURC's monitoring exercise and investigations are: 1, that the ECG is billing customers over irregular periods from 18 days to 43 days, which is in contravention of the 28-day billing cycle for the customer. 2, some customers are billed above the PURC approved service charge and the approved tariff by the PURC in December 2015. 3, that ECG is billing customers who have been disconnected over a period of 6 months with the accumulated debt figure instead of their monthly actual consumption. Also, more than 62% of complaints received by the PURC in the first quarter of 2016 were on overbilling as compared to the previous year, which is some 18%. Customer billing data shows clearly that the ECG has challenges with migrating customer information from the old billing system to the new billing system or software. Now, their investigations also revealed that district frontline staff who are entrusted to issue customer bills do not have the adequate technical capacity to accurately use the new billing software, hence the billing anomalies that customers are experiencing today. It continues that with the new billing software, the billing cycle of some customers is over a period of some 4 years, from 2015 to 2019. The PURC is, however, ordering the ECG with immediate effect to put in the following measures to alleviate the plight of customers who have been slapped with higher bills because of the implementation of the new billing software. Software experts should be appointed to audit the new billing system currently being rolled out and present a report to the Commission within 10 working days. 2, any customer who has been wrongfully billed and is connected must be reconnected. 3, ECG should correct all billing anomalies and rebill all consumers who have been affected. ECG should also adequately train frontline staff to enable them effectively implement and use the new billing software. The ECG should sensitize the public on the implementation of the new billing system, and failure to comply with these orders will result in sanctions against the ECG. And the PURC is also urging you, consumers who are experiencing any issues to do with overbilling, to report to the Commission. And that's signed by Nanaya Ajampem Jantoa, the Director of Public Relations and External Affairs. So that's for the statement put. Yes, that's for the statement that's been put together by the PURC on this matter. So that's the statement there. Already, there are still some key issues to ask, because about some 3 weeks ago, the PURC made an announcement that in fact they were going to punish the ECG for these issues to do with the billing, and that's something we've done about it. Question is, how different is that from what we're seeing today, and what will the sanctions be beyond just saying that the billing has been suspended? What happens to those who overbill customers deliberately, the frontline staff who did not get the requisite training for it? What happens to them as well? Key questions that we'll try and get answers to later on this channel. But we also know that because this has happened in Parliament, let's get a quick update from Elton on what else transpired in Ghana's legislature today. Elton, briefly for me, what else also happened beyond issues to do with the...
Well, today they had a short sitting because of the demise of the Member of Parliament for Abetifi. Members went to the House to commemorate with the Bibri family. Before that, the Public Accounts Committee read a report by the Auditor General regarding Metropolitan, Municipal and District Assemblies covering the period 2010 to 2012, in which some infractions were raised by the Auditor General. Some payments totaling over 15.4 million Ghana cedis without supporting documents came out strongly. Also,
and this is from where exactly?
This is, different assemblies put together. They made payments over 15.4 million Ghana cedis, but they could not provide the relevant documentation.
And receipts for them?
Yeah, receipts for them. So the recommendation is that the officers involved be sanctioned for wrongdoing. Also, 58 assemblies across the country, they've been cited for stealing, and the amount involved is 604,000 Ghana cedis.
Stealing, you
stealing,
say?
yeah, stealing. The word used by the authorities is stealing and misappropriation of funds. 604,000 Ghana cedis. The recommendation again here is that those individuals should be sanctioned. They are blaming the district chief executives and the regional coordination councils for not playing their supervisory role effectively. That's how come some of the assembly staff are able to, circumvent the process, violate existing financial administration, regulations, and then, embezzle funds for their personal gains.
Okay, this is something that we will look into a bit later on, sometime in this week, on assemblies and the monies that are being spent without receipts, and also the Auditor General saying that some people in these assemblies actually were stealing from Ghana's public purse. We'll probe that matter a bit later. But let's go for a quick break. When we come back, the developments in Akosombo with the flooding, we have an update for you. Stay with us, we'll bring you the details.